whatever we thought Miami Ole Miss was going to be, it was better. The Hurricanes come out with a 31-27 lead in a game that saw fourth quarter lead changes. Caroline, this one came out a winning touchdown run with 18 seconds left for Carson Beck. Controversy on the last play of the game. This thing was absolute chaos, and you were there to witness it in person.
I was. It was epic. It was hard to put into words what it felt like being on the field for that fourth quarter, because you could literally tangibly feel the energy shift. In this clip right here, you see Carson Beck's final touchdown run on that Miami sideline. It erupted, and then the Ole Miss fan base was just to my left right there, and it was pure and utter silence. You could hear a pin drop, and then you kind of felt that shift when Trinidad Chambliss just continued to hit receivers for first down after first down. You could feel the Ole Miss sideline, my goodness, start to feel even more anticipation. Just the shift was so cool to see after a first half and maybe even first three quarters that was low scoring, a lot of good defense, kind of slogging it out, a lot of kicks in that first half. But you mentioned how close it was, how tightly contested it was. Honestly, Fitz, it had no business being as close as it was. If you didn't watch the game and you did not know what the score was, and you just looked at some of the numbers and some of the statistics, Miami had the ball for 12 minutes of the first quarter. Miami had the ball for 23 minutes of the first half, and Miami had the ball for more than 41 minutes of the entirety of the game. I mean, Miami ran almost double the number of plays that Ole Miss did, yet Ole Miss continued to hang around. All the credit in the world to to Ole Miss, to continue to stay in this game, to continue to find ways to make it uncomfortable. Because when Ole Miss got that first lead in the fourth quarter, that was the moment where I felt, oh my God, Miami's going to blow this. A game that they are statistically dominating in every single facet except the score. They're going to blow this. Trinidad Chambliss is going to find a way. That this Ole Miss adversity, that way that Ole Miss has had their backs against the wall, the kind of us against the world mentality that they've had for this entire college football playoff is going to come to fruition and, come to rear its ugly head again. So I thought that was such a interesting element of this game that I want to give credit to Ole Miss for, but also credit to Miami for keeping Ole Miss out of the end zone and forcing them to kick field goals to keep themselves in this lead. Credit to Carson Beck, a guy who was asked to not do too much this entire college football playoff. Fitz, he threw for a combined 250 yards in those first two games. Miami won games by running the football and by playing great defense, but he was the kind of unsuspecting hero of the game, scoring that final touchdown and ultimately punching their ticket back to Miami for the national championship game.
Well, and before we get to any of the negative, like the end of the game, let's talk about Carson for a second, because you want to talk about legacy-defining moments. You want to talk about history. When you tell the story, I say this all the time, of the college football season, now when you tell the story of this college football playoff, Carson Beck has just become a massive part of it, because to your point, not only was he throwing the football more than he had in the first two games, they were pushing the ball downfield more, which I thought was going to be part of an Achilles heel for them. I'm absolutely wrong. I was absolutely wrong in every possible way about Carson Beck last night, and you saw it. Like, he was everything that we thought Carson Beck could be at his best. He was everything that had people believe that he was possibly the best quarterback in college football this year when the season started, right? Like, you look at all of these things, and you just look at what was defined by the way that Carson Beck played, not just with his legs, but with his legs to create more opportunities with his arm, with his accuracy, with his ability to look guys off when he was pushing the ball down the field. I felt like this was everything. This was the best of Carson Beck all rolled into one against an Ole Miss defense that was out there trying their best. But my God, you mentioned the time of possession. I don't think that's even the biggest part of the story. Third down defense. Miami converted 11 third downs in this game. That's a new college football playoff record, right? 11 times. They were 11 and 19. And so many of them were Carson Beck dropping back, finding a way to make a play on 3rd and 6, on 3rd and 8, on 3rd and 7. Like, they weren't short conversions. We were seeing Miami commit to running the football. I've said this repeatedly through the college football playoff. The team that has the most rushes has won rushing attempts, not rushing yards, just rushing attempts, has won all but one game so far in the college football playoff. That is a threat. Miami was committed to running the football. But even when they weren't having success doing it, as Ole Miss was wearing down, they were still able to carve up Ole Miss because Carson Beck was wildly accurate. This was just such a prove it moment to Carson Beck, to the entire world, where he turned around and said, yeah, I'm worth every damn penny. Doesn't matter how long I've been in college football. Doesn't matter how many programs I've played for. Doesn't matter how I got here right now. Miami has a shot at a national championship in large part because they decided to pay that man to be their quarterback this year.
And I don't want to get it twisted. Carson Beck was not flawless last night. Like, Carson Beck was overthrowing receivers. Carson Beck was inaccurate at times. Carson Beck put the ball in harm's way, and it ultimately cost them with one bad pick. That I don't think that Miami's formula for victory is through Carson Beck. I don't think that Miami's typical formula for winning college football playoff games is Carson Beck dropping back and throwing it 40 times. He was 23 of 37 last night. I thought that if Miami just ran the ball on every single down, they probably beat Ole Miss by larger margin than they did last night. But they did put the ball in Carson Beck's hands, and he did have some pop off the page, wow kind of throws, some wow kind of explosive plays. And I think that was important for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's Mario Cristobal and that entire coaching staff's way of proving to Carson Beck, like, look, we trust you. We want to give you this confidence. We want to reiterate how important you are to this game plan. I think it was also important to keep Ole Miss's defense off balance. That, look, we're not going to run on every single down. We have to continue to keep you guessing. But if I could nitpick, and look, not every single victory comes flawlessly, and Miami was not flawless last night. 9 penalties. I counted 4 dropped picks, and at least one of those could have been taken to the house, if not 2 pick sixes. So several opportunities that were left on the field out there last night. But, I thought that Miami should have run the ball more. It was so clear when Miami was running the football that they were the more physical football team. This was the first time that I got to see Mark Fletcher in person. Fitz, he was dragging 1 Ole Miss defender, 2 Ole Miss defenders, hell, even 3 Ole Miss defenders, 5, 10 extra yards downfield. Like, he was pushing them like they were kindergartners. And we're talking about 280-pound SEC linebackers here. There was just a level of physicality that Miami had in the run game that Mark Fletcher and Jamar Brown had themselves. That was just different. That was just so much better and so much bigger than what Ole Miss's defense could offer.
Well, 1,000%. And to your point, everything that went wrong for Carson Beck didn't matter in the fourth quarter because that's where he was elite. And I don't think he's going to be. I don't think he's elite in that situation if they haven't just run the dog what out of that defensive line for Ole Miss. And they had by that point. Like, there was no real pressure coming at Carson. They couldn't get anything up in his face. And, ultimately they get a huge touchdown. His first rushing touchdown since September is the go-ahead touchdown. But even with 18 seconds left, Ole Miss drives down the field. They put themselves in a situation with 6 seconds left in the game where they can win it. And I'm sorry, Caroline, like, this is where we got to get to the controversy that comes from this thing. I don't care what the time of the game is. And you and I have worked together long enough. I've been consistent about this. And people don't like this opinion from me when it plays the other way. But this is the reason I have it. Last night was the reason I have the opinion. A foul is a foul. A penalty is a penalty. I don't care what time's on the clock. If you ask referees at the end of a game to swallow their whistle because suddenly you want the go-ahead shot to have a chance to go in basketball, or you want the big touchdown to have an opportunity at the end of a football game, how often do we say, oh, we're not here to see the refs. We don't care about the refs. They need to stop interjecting themselves. Well, what you have last night is what happens when the opposite is true. Because it is so wildly clear on the replay that the wide receiver is grabbed. The defender never really looks to the ball. One arm is hooked. It's pass interference. And I have yet to find, I think, a great expert that's looked at this play in replay and not agreed with this. Like, this was clearly pass interference. And so I hear everyone when they say, oh, we don't want the refs to decide a game. Let the players play. All of these things. No. A penalty's a penalty. A foul's a foul. And you don't like that opinion, many people, when I have it, when refs swallow the whistles and we get a great moment. And I hate that. I hate it in this moment, too. Because Ole Miss players, Ole Miss fans, they deserve, the entire Ole Miss program deserved to at least see what the game could have played out like if they'd have had the opportunity for one more play, given the fact that was clearly pass interference.
It was clearly pass interference. And I think Miami got away with one there. if you're an Ole Miss fan waking up this morning feeling like you got jobbed by the refs, I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong. But I will say that there were some questionable calls or maybe missed calls on both sides of the ball last night. That initial targeting that they threw a flag for in the fourth quarter, it was eventually called back. I thought that's targeting. Like, that was textbook targeting. Sure, he didn't lead with his head, and sure, it wasn't crown to crown helmet contact, but that was targeting. Later in the game, Miami defender was called for targeting. I thought, that's not targeting. He led with the shoulder. Sure, yes, there was head-to-head contact, but he put his shoulder down and led with his shoulder. I thought, that's not targeting. If you're not going to call that first one targeting, you sure as heck cannot call this one targeting. And they did. I think that's my biggest frustration. Probably a lot of football fans' frustrations with targeting calls is the inconsistency. If you want to be lax with a flag or if you want to be tight with a flag, I have no problem at all as long as you are consistent. There were several missed PI calls on Ole Miss, on Miami. So officiating was not flawless last night, but I cannot say waking up today that the officials cost Ole Miss. I cannot
No,
say
but
today that the officials decided that game, but I think you're fair in pointing out what was a, clearly a missed call in the most important time in the game in the final few seconds in Ole Miss's final opportunity.
and look, there's a couple layers to this because you're right. No one play costs anybody a football game. I don't care what the one play is. I mean, the fact that you doinked a field goal out didn't cost Ole Miss the football game. It would have changed the trajectory of the rest of the game if that hadn't happened. One play never wins or loses the game. My issue is that when there's a ref standing right there, all right, and you look at the ref, and the first thing you think, and so many people say is, well, you can't call it in that situation. Hail Marys have a problem. A, this wasn't a standard Hail Mary, but B, it was so egregious, you have to call it. Otherwise, why not just basically murder everybody that's in the end zone every single time? Like, at some point, it
Yeah.
becomes so egregious that you have to call it. So the other part, to your point, and this is where everybody always says, oh, but what about that call and what about that? You're right. You're right. But just like we look at quarterbacks, you can have the game of your life as a quarterback. You can throw 5 touchdowns. But if on the last play of the game you got a wide open guy and you throw an interception, the first take the next day is going to be you're a bum because you couldn't win when the game was on the line. We're tougher on athletes when the game is on the line. I'm tougher on refs when the game is on the line. Even if you've missed every call up to that point and you've been inconsistent, none of that excuses the fact that when you are a foot away, when a ref is blocking half the cameramen because they are right there to look at it happen, and they choose to swallow their whistle on a clear and egregious pass interference, I don't really care how we got there. I'm looking at that one play, and I'm saying, you, sir, did not do your job on that one play. Either you didn't do your job because you didn't want to be the story at the end of the game, which is a stupid reason to not do your job, or you didn't do your job because you're not good enough at your job to see the call and make the call, which then makes me wonder why the hell you're on the sidelines. Either way, I have a problem with the missed, just point blank period. I have a problem with missing that call in that moment, no matter how bad or inconsistent they were leading up to that point.
If you see it, call it. That's my philosophy. You can't swallow your whistle in a moment just because it's a big moment. But before we put a bow on this conversation, I do just want to point out the Disney Channel movie feel good story of all of this. Mario Cristobal's from Miami. Mario Cristobal won a national championship at Miami. Mario Cristobal witnessed firsthand and was part of the ascension of the U as we know it. Now he has Miami back in the national championship for the first time in almost a quarter of a century, and it's being played in Miami in a year when nobody even thought that they should be there. If Ole Miss had won this game, I would have been saying the exact same thing. How great of a story is this? Ole Miss, their coach leaves, and now they're on their way to a national championship game. But to the victor go the spoils, and I love this story and everything that it has meant to this Miami team.